All right, sounds good. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Good afternoon. Due to the governor's order, all members of the Citizens Budget Advisory Council are participating virtually. For virtual meetings, committee members and guests will be muted until asked to be heard. At that time, they will be recognized and can unmute. When there is a vote, it will be necessary to take a roll call vote. A committee member will be recognized and state their vote. Today's meeting is a public meeting. The meeting will also be live streamed on the city's YouTube channel, which can be accessed at cityofws.org/2682/video. A recording of today's meeting will be available by next Tuesday on the city's website, cityofws.org. All right, so the first order of business is to approve the minutes. Hope everybody's had a chance to look through those. So I'm going to do it right this time, and we're going to do a roll call vote. So we don't have everybody here, but so when I state your name, if you would, state your vote as it pertains to the minutes. So we'll start with Mr. Ross Griffith.
I approve.
Okay. Sheila? Oh, you're muted. Sheila, you're muted. You had mentioned there was
one little typo I found, but otherwise I approve.
Okay. Okay, so I think that's all we have here today. Okay. So can we are we able to approve the minutes with such few?
We just can approve them through consensus.
Okay.
Based on the member present.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Patrice.
Okay. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
So as we discussed in our last meeting, where we did an in-depth review of our police budget, it was on our theme of social justice and equity in the budget process. And so last evening, I shared with the City Council information on an early budget forecast. And so this was a presentation just to give the Mayor and City Council a really just early glimpse of the budget and what we're currently looking at for the fiscal year starting July 1st. And so that'll go from July 1st of this year till June 30th of 2022. And so today I'll just share with you all that same presentation, but feel free as I go through each slide to stop me at any point and ask questions, or if you have some concerns, but this will give you an idea of kind of, here's Dr. Schuler coming in. Give her 1 second. So this just to give you a little idea of kind of how we budget, what's in the budget at really a very, very high level. You know, the budget staff, they do all of the detailed level of work. They work, everyone's assigned to a department. And so they are really in the weeds of the budget. And so everything gets kind of rolled up to a more bigger picture. And so this is kind of what this is. And understanding that this will change as we get more information, especially about revenues. And so this doesn't really necessarily touch on kind of the social justice theme, but it all merges together. So you've got things that are going on in the community, you've got citizens who are demanding certain things from council, and then you've got the budget and that they have to consider. And is there space to add new programs or projects or special interests, or to reallocate resources? So anyway, I'll just get into it. All right, so this first slide is our year end. So this is the current year that we're in. So this started in July 2020, and will end this June. And so we budgeted actually to utilize $5.4 million in fund balance. So fund balance is kind of our reserve, it's our waiting room. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the waiting room. It's our reserve pot of money. And ideally you wouldn't spend it, but we had such a large budget gap last year to where we were projecting to spend 5.4. And this was really because of the unknowns with COVID-19. So we just didn't know what was going to happen with COVID-19. Thank goodness, this is how we expect to end the year. So we're only planning to use $1.1 million. And essentially, this is in our revenues. Basically, the driver of this is we need to subsidize the fair. As you recall, we had to cancel the fair this year because of COVID-19. And so we needed to provide some subsidy to the fair fund. So that was a little over $1 million. And then our expenditures were less than what we planned as well. So we did really good on our operating side for expenditures. So that's current year. So we like to show council our general fund balance. So I mentioned fund balance before and how we planned to use 5.4 million and didn't. So currently our fund balance is $49 million. And so that is a decrease from the previous year, which was 51.5 million. Now, because I said we're not going to use all of this, this will look a little bit better, maybe, when the finance redoes this particular chart. But right now, our fund balance is at 49 million. Keep in mind, though, that only 21.5 million is unrestricted money. So 22.1 million is restricted and we could not touch. And so really best practices would say you would need 2 months worth of reserve in your fund balance. And so this next slide will show that we're not there. This line kind of shows our history in our general fund balance, i.e. savings kind of account. We would like to be, our policy is at 14%. If you actually took our general fund and divided it by 2 per 2 months, we probably should be at 16%, but we're currently at 10%. And so, you know, just hard economic times and us kind of dipping into our reserves, we are below where we really need to be in our reserve policy. And so there are some measures that we hope the council will take into replenishing our reserve to at least get it back to this line. So at one point, you see the line is here, that was at 10% for years, the policy was at 10%. But as our general fund grew, the policy grew in alignment with that, so.
Patrice.
Yes.
On that slide, what happened in 2015 to 2016 that it went down so much?
2015, they dipped into it, and I can't remember exactly, and I can look into that. Steve, do you recall?
I do not off the top of my head.
Okay, it was just curiosity, it's not critical.
Yeah, I mean, for some reason, they dipped into the fund balance reserve and utilized that money, just as though as we were going to use the $5.4 million in this current year. So that would have brought our reserves down to the 10%. So something also either in the economy or something was happening then where they needed to utilize that much fund balance. So went up, went down, went back up, and now we are back down again. So the goal is to replenish. In 2000, we were doing really well. So we just need to get that line back up. And of course, our policy is a little bit higher than what it used to be.
Patrice, bonds wouldn't have any impact on that reserve balance, would it? I wouldn't.
No, it wouldn't. Okay. So moving on to FY22, fiscal year 22. This is the upcoming budget that we're preparing for. Right now, we're looking at our revenues coming in at 208.5 million, and then our expenses at $220.4 million. So that leaves a gap from revenues to expenditures of $11.9 million. So that is significant. So when you see almost a $12 million gap, it's like, how in the world do we fill a gap that large? And it's a great question if you're thinking it. And that is something the budget office will have to consider on top of all of the pressures that council is receiving for citizens for more services and more, and understanding we have a gap. So that's important to note. Let me see if I can, okay. So that yellow, I'm sorry, the light blue column here is our expenditures. So this slide shows you what's in that light blue area, at least the drivers. It's not every single item, but these are kind of the high level items that are really pushing that expenditure column. So what our goal would be to put merit back in for employees. We had to take it out to balance the budget last year. And so for early forecast, we threw it in there, and we hope it stays because that's important, pay for performance. Each year for the last several years, council has given public safety a supplemental pay of 2% that goes in effect on January 1st of each year. And so that's $800,000 to add that. They also added this current year a 1% supplemental pay only for public safety personnel. And so when we get into the next fiscal year, there'll be a full year impact of that increase. We also have a parking fund. And so the general fund provides a subsidy to that. And so we would need to reinstate that potentially. The police department has a contract with Axon, and this is for their body cameras and tasers and lasers and data storage. And so that is a major driver. It is not an upgrade like they wanted, which would have cost 2 to 3 times more than this amount, but it is a significant amount. So I decided to list it as a driver. There's also been a discussion about increasing the minimum wage to $15 per hour. And so if we did that, it'll affect about 217 employees, and it will cost us $280,000. And then we have a recycling contract that's up for renewal, which will cost over about $1 million, but it won't go into effect until April of next year. And so we will only budget a 4th year of those costs. So total base budget increase is $6.2 million from current year. So it's about a 3% increase in expenditures.
Patrice, two questions. So
okay.
did you say that employees did not get a 2% merit increase last year?
Yes.
Okay, so they did not get, and what is the parking fund subsidy? What does that mean?
So we have different funds. So general fund is our main taxpayer kind of fund, but then there's other funds. So this is a whole separate fund, and it provides maintenance and things to like our parking decks.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So it's a separate fund, and the fund to remain whole, the general fund subsidizes it. So yeah, so we have other like fairgrounds fund is a separate fund, occupancy tax fund.
Okay.
So yeah, so parking fund is just one of those that we need to subsidize. And I did mention, and I guess I could have put in this driver. Well, we did that current year, is subsidize the fairgrounds fund by $1 million. So yeah, it's just another fund.
Okay.
Okay. And so the dark blue column of this slide, this is our revenue slide on our gap slide. These are the drivers in the revenue. And so the major revenue, we have several revenue sources, but the major revenue sources are obviously our property taxes. And you all would have gotten a letter this year. We're under a reappraisal and probably your home value increased. And so some people aren't happy about that. Some people are. So it just depends on where you are. But that generates revenue for the city, obviously. And so that is a major revenue source. We're assuming for FY22 that there will be a 1.77% growth above our estimated year end. And so that will generate approximately $1.4 million of additional revenue. Now, once we get additional information from our tax office, which we will get March, April, and May, we get each month, he gives a different update. And so we will adjust that. So the goal would be for this to grow significantly since the property values have increased, but we'll see. So this is kind of a conservative estimate of the growth, and that will change. And then the sales tax, we're assuming no growth above projected year end. However, this amount is from budget to budget growth. So right now we're looking at almost $5 million growth in our sales taxes. So sales taxes has been trending well. We budgeted really conservative, not knowing the impact of COVID, but for some reason people are spending. I know the federal check that came in that people received was a boost to the economy. There'll be another check, but in the meantime, people are spending. So there was not as significant impact to sales tax as we thought. And right now, for this early forecast, we're not anticipating changes to user fees. So user fees would be charges, say, to a picnic shelter or parking fees or any fees that the city has. Okay. So this is our tax base slide. It just shows the growth in our property tax base from year over year. So we're looking at a 1% estimated growth for year end FY21. And then, as I mentioned before, the 1.77 projected growth for the tax base for FY22. So we're hoping this number will increase significantly because it was a revaluation year. And you see in FY19, it was also a reval year. So, so 5% growth is probably, would be typical and great, but so we'll see what we get from the tax office. And so the next couple of slides is just reminders to council that this is a new normal, this is a new day. There are some impacts to COVID that may be long-term and we just don't know. At the time, we thought there was going to be slow revenue growth. Like I said, sales tax is better than we projected, but we'll see with property tax, and I actually think that's going to be better than we are projecting. And so, but there's a need for budgetary constraints. You all saw our fund balance slide. We're below where we need to be. And so there needs to be an effort to get that back up. And so, yeah, strategy to rebuild the fund balance. So our budget goals is to restore employee pay for performance. So employee pay, so really the 2% was this current year, no one got the merit, although police, fire, and emergency management would have gotten the 2% supplement, mental pay. So they got something, but the general employees did not get anything for performance. So that's a goal to add that. Of course, always to replace aging equipment and vehicles to further enhance our IT technology and respond to service needs. And of course, our maintaining the city's AAA credit rating is very important for the city. So back in July 1st, well, really during the budget process last year, we developed a resolution that council ultimately approved that talked about some austerity measures. And so this is really to just kind of hopefully keep council kind of aware of where we are with our budget situation and create some measures for them to follow so that we can kind of get our budget back on track. And so any special projects that are unplanned or special events that cost more than $1,000, we wanted it to go to council for full council approval. The city manager has abilities to move money or help make things happen if it's less than that, but if it's above 1,000, we would like for it to go to council. If it's unbudgeted, we must find offsetting reduction in expenditures. So, you know, there's been times where it's like, oh, here's a special project, let's figure out how to fund it. Well, now we want to say, yes, we can fund it, but this is what will have to be reduced to pay for it. And then we requested that special projects come with a fiscal note so that we can plan out the cost allocation and any offsetting expenditure. And then the big piece is this general fund balance. And so we want to get back to our 14% reserve. And so any new revenue that we receive really should go back to our fund balance to build that back up. So that really is it. This is just our review calendar. This is kind of our process for the budget and what happens. So this was an early forecast, but come April, we will balance a budget. We will present a budget that is balanced. We'll also show them how we got to that. So, you know, hopefully we can keep merit in and some of these other things that you saw, but to close $12 million, we would have to have significant revenue growth and then still figure out how do we cut $1 million, $2, $3, $4, $5 million from our expenditures. And when you have that big of a gap, you're looking at maybe positions, programs potentially. So we'll come up with a plan and then send it to council, and then they will tell us, yeah, no, put that back in or whatever around the trial balance budget. And then after that, we'll talk to council, and then the city, so this is officially, the proposed budget is what we call the city manager's proposed budget. So that'll go out in May, and the citizens and the community will get the chance to look at it and weigh in on the proposed budget. And then on the 27th, there'll be another workshop. We'll probably review a little bit more about the budget and then highlight community agencies. Now, we spend most of our time talking about nonprofit agencies who ask for funding. So it's only about 1.2% of our entire budget, but this gets the most play and community input. So that same day, we have a public hearing, and what it'll happen is it'll be these nonprofits who want money showing up, and they won't be physical, probably all virtual, to say, you know, they need more money. And then on the 3rd, we'll actually, the finance committee will recommend a budget and set a property tax rate. So whether it stays the same, whether they'll choose a revenue neutral rate, that'll be decided in this workshop. and then it goes to full council on the 21st, which is where they will hear a second public hearing, and then they'll adopt the budget. So that is our process for the budget.
Patrice, will you be sending us these slides?
I can, absolutely.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay,
Thanks.
You're welcome. Any questions or concerns? Ideas of how to close an $11.9 million budget gap?
Are we receiving, is the city going to be receiving any money from the federal government? I read somewhere where the city is getting about $7 million or some change for emergency rent assistance. I don't know if that's all going for rent assistance. I mean, how does that play into this at all? Will that help close this gap, or?
No, it is specifically for rental assistance. Yeah. Okay. And it'll be outsourced for an organization to give that money out to the community. It's intended for people. Yeah, direct assistance. The city's got some CARES Act money. So we got some in the fall, and I think it kind of offset some police salaries officially, but with the savings from that, we actually increased our minimum wage to $14.31. So it got increased effective January 1st to increase the minimum wage, and they want to move it forward further to $15 an hour. We also did add a little bit back to the fund balance, so that did occur, and they also wanted to give that 1% supplemental pay to public safety. That was effective this January. So the CARES Act was additional revenue. We also got CARES Act for the Winston-Salem Transit Authority, so they got money that helped with their operations through COVID. But it does, none of that really helps our general fund, so to speak. And right now it's not helping our gap, so no. So definitely not the 7 million for rental assistance.
Okay.
So much is in personnel. I wonder if there are efforts to cut personnel to get that gap narrowed.
Yeah, we typically don't cut people. So if we end up getting to a place where we realize our revenue growth isn't enough to cover that gap, which it won't be, yeah, we'll look at several budget balancing strategies. We have used just freezing positions, freezing vacant positions. We have cut positions, but they've all been vacant. So departments will, or we'll go through really the vacancy list and identify positions that potentially can be frozen or eliminated. So we've eliminated positions, but no people. We have not done any RIFs or people at this point.
Okay, that's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so goal is to protect existing employees. But we have enough vacancies typically if we need to. It just long-term, you know, some departments need those positions. So we can't freeze or cut certain ones. You still want your trash picked up, and certain services you still want to go on, even if they're vacant currently. But the ones that we know we can freeze or cut, that's on the list.
In comparison to other cities our size, are there any use fees that we haven't put in place that other places do put in place that we could consider?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have quite a few user fees. There's a whole user fee guide. The issue is many of those fees have not been increased. as other cities may have a plan to just kind of increase them every so many years. So we kind of maintained our user fees. So that is an area that we may need to consider, like, can we increase on certain fees? So, and fines, fees and fines goes into that. So I wouldn't say we have, other cities have different fees. It's just adjusting the fees annually, in which we don't do. So there's fees that have not been increased over a decade that we probably should look at and bring it to council's attention. And so it's all about, you know, how willing they are to go on fees. Because combined, even though our property tax is, you know, we'll determine what that'll be after this revow, but our combined user fees is lower than many of the other jurisdictions. Heather updates fee user, what is it called? Fees chart. And the mayor likes to see that so that he can say collectively, with all our fees, all our property taxes, all of our, collectively, our fees are lower, stormwater fees, things like that.
I've read with interest the benchmarking you sent us on the police budget.
Yep.
And particularly comparing ourselves with Greensboro, since our population is similar. But I was intrigued with the statistic of 58.7 crimes per 1,000 population for Winston-Salem versus only 41.8 for Greensboro. And obviously, if we can reduce crime, we can reduce our costs. And obviously, other issues would be reduced of a humane nature. Just wondering what's being done in this area.
Yeah, and keep in mind too, Ross, that I think I mentioned before, they weren't using the exact same crime reporting system as we are. So I think when we see the new benchmark data, I mean, it would be my assumption, and I don't know, that those numbers might look more, you know, equal or similar. But I mean, the police department is constantly working on crime reduction and prevention, and doing as much kind of, I don't know if they officially call it like communities, policing in communities, or community policing and things like that. They had a Cops with Coffee program. They do a number of kind of outreach type events to connect better with the community. You'll see our police chief and a lot of the assistant chiefs out quite a bit and doing forums and integrating with the community. And so I know there are efforts, but at the same time, you've got the efforts of defund police. And so, you know, if you've got rising crime and you need more police, and then you've got, you know, citizens saying defund police, you know, you have to balance both of those interests. So it's really about recruiting and retaining even our existing patrol so that they can, you know, be responsive to a lot of the crimes. It's hard to do prevention when you're really focused on response only. So now you're just kind of responding to calls and don't probably have enough staff to do a lot of the prevention work. But there's a lot of conversation around that. Our public safety committee, they meet on Monday evening. Well, they met yesterday at like 6 o'clock. So some of the conversations are happening around, you know, mental health and responding to calls versus sworn officers. And so they're working hard on that.
Good, thank you.
All right. Well, I guess if that's all the discussion. So the next meeting is going to be Tuesday, March 9th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much, Patrice.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Yeah, thanks, Patrice. Thank you.